Hello, everybody, and welcome. Once again, thank you for joining us. We are glad that you are with us. Hopefully, we are bringing you another great episode, um, a helpful review, and an enjoyable and entertaining conversation between the two of us. My name is Juan, here as always with Kevin,
Hello, everybody out there.
missing Mark, but regardless, we like movies. If you like what you hear on this episode, please remember to hit that subscribe button, follow us, like us, comment, let us know what you think, hit us with some recommendations, um, and share if you are able to. Um, Outside of that, want to remind you that this is our review number 30 for season 2 and is our season finale. After this, I think we will take a well deserved break, and then, God willing, be back bigger, better, faster, stronger with season 3. Um, yeah, excited about that. Kevin, do you have any words here before we jump into our business? Just as a conclusion, as an
Just,
introduction to a conclusion for season 3,
just for all the
season
people who,
2.
just for all the people who stuck with us, or if you just stumbled upon this one, thank you, welcome, and we hope to move forward and bring you some delightful things in your ears.
We aim to entertain.
Rawr.
All right. So on this episode, I had the pleasure of getting to pick our season finale, and my pick was the 20. Well, excuse me here. Sorry about that. All right. As I was saying, my pick is the 2023 film titled They Cloned Tyrone. Um, this is a film directed by Juel Taylor. It
Ooh,
stars
juice.
John Boyega, Teyonah Parris, and Jamie Foxx. It is produced by Macromedia, distributed by Netflix. It was released on July 14th. I have two release dates here. It says July 14th, 2023, United States, and then July 21st, 2023, Netflix. Not sure why those are different. The film has a running time of 119 minutes. Let's see if we can get any more helpful information here. The tagline is just damn. Um, and let's see. Looks like that's all I got for you at this point. Don't have any numbers as far as budget. Maybe that'll be to come later. But anyway,
One, before you
yeah.
continue, July 14th, they had a limited theatrical release, and a week later
Oh,
released on Netflix.
okay. Limited theatrical release. I can tell you that the movie currently boasts a Rotten Tomatoes critic score of 94%, with 123 reviews, and an audience score of 100%, however, with fewer than 50 verified ratings. As for me, I felt after maybe seeing whether it was a trailer or some kind of promotion for the movie, um, felt that it had a lot of potential. Um, I'm a, I'm a Jamie Foxx fan, and so um, he's was recently, in the headlines over his health issues, but um, in spite of that, getting from what I saw in the trailers, getting to see him as a pimp, and seeing what that portrayal would be like in what was advertised as a sci-fi slash comedy movie, with obviously an interesting premise, based off of just the title of the movie. So for me, it just felt like it had a lot of potential, um, and you know, uh, and so I was just mainly just trusting in Jamie Foxx there for that. Um, my thoughts on it, initially, my introduction is that I think the movie. I was a little bit disappointed in some ways. Um, I expected a lot more comedy. I think they missed an opportunity. I think the film kind of suffers from a little bit of an identity crisis, not really certain of what it wants to be, with all the ingredients that are presented, and everything that they kind of had to play with. I felt that it was long. I found myself a little bored, more than halfway through the movie. I think it could have been cut down to an hour and a half, and that would have been a really sweet spot for this movie. Um, but I think they tried to do too much, and kind of just missed the mark on several different areas. So I was a little bit disappointed. What about you, Kevin?
Um, we've discussed probably at length sometimes about Netflix movies, and again, I apparently this had theatrical release. I thought it was a Netflix original. There's some stuff I really liked, and there's some stuff I could never go through my life seeing again, which lands this right in the middle of a lukewarm movie for me. It's There's some performances I think were wasted. I think the mains did a decent job. I think there were some ideas that could have been further, explored. There could have been more comedy minded from this concept, and ultimately you just got something that, oh, I don't know if I should reveal it now. I would never watch again. I probably would never, you know, recommend it to anyone. I might recommend a scene or two. I'm like, hey, this part was kind of cool, but ultimately, like I like what you said, where it suffered from an identity crisis because I felt like they didn't want to go too far into comedy and they didn't want to go into this, and then even the aesthetics of like the a lot of purple on the underground thing, which we'll get into in the lab. I'm like, looks like it's just there for there. I didn't like the resolution. I thought that was just too boom, 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 and I did think there was great
Oh,
things.
you mean like the resolution of the plot? I
Yeah,
thought you
yeah.
meant like the
Oh,
um,
oh, I didn't like that. It was very dark, at least on my TV.
yeah, it was dark,
You know what I mean?
grainy.
So yeah, but like I thought there were concepts where revealing the true original and how he played into everything, and I'm gonna say it. I don't get why it was called They Cloned Tyrone because you get introduced to Tyrone at the end, but apparently Tyrone's a clone too. So it would have been different if this was something they had been watching the whole time. They're like, oh, Tyrone, they cloned you, but like it was just something that felt like was added on. I thought it was named They Cloned Tyrone just because it's catchy. I saw the trailer, I heard the name, I was really into it. I had to watch this in two viewings because the first viewing was putting me to sleep. So I had to come back and watch it because again there were some great things that were introduced, but I just ultimately thought none of the payoffs were really that phenomenally great.
Yeah. Um, um, yeah, I agree. It was unfortunately a missed opportunity. So yeah, I guess to begin with, let me fill everybody in on kind of what the movie is about. The IMDb description, the brief description, just tells us that a series of eerie events thrusts an unlikely trio onto the trail of a nefarious government conspiracy in this pulpy mystery caper. Now, what's interesting about that description is that while I was disappointed in the comedic and the sci-fi um,
Okay.
description of the movie, the one thing that did kind of have that did ha- that had me, geez, that had me gripped for at least half of the film, and maybe slightly more than that, was the mystery component, and just waiting to find out and figure out what all was going on, and so that was, I think, the best thing that the movie had going for it. I think once things start to become revealed, it loses that, obviously, and then there's really not much to kind of it just, the climax, and like you said, the resolution doesn't really, it's not very strong, and so I think it was around that point that I just felt like it was dragging, and I was kind of just ready for it to end. I did feel that the performances, at least from the three leads, were solid from an acting standpoint. Um, it just was unfortunate that they didn't get any any substantial comedic material to work with. One of my biggest problems is that, again, while I think John Boyega is a fine actor, and I think he played his character very well in this movie, um, with drama and intensity. I think this film needed a comedic lead, and that they really should have leaned into this being a funny movie, and maybe even a funny sci-fi movie. Which, to give you a great example of a movie that does that, is Edgar Wright, and the final of his trilogies. What is it called?
At World's End.
That At World's End. At World's End, or
Oh wait, no, it's
something. The end of the world.
I'll find it for you.
But yeah, while you do that, that's a movie that does
The World's End.
The World's End. Yeah, that does an exceptional job, really leaning into comedy with great comedic actors, but then also obviously heavily also leans into sci-fi. Um, this movie didn't, lean into either of those, and I wonder if it's because there was another agenda, or just another message that kind of took precedence over those, with maybe some some of the racial things that the movie wants to I mean, subtly and overtly kind of um, highlight. So I I don't know if it, you know I haven't watched any interviews or anything like that to see kind of where the writing and the directing failed, this movie. But when you have Jamie Foxx, as a pimp, there's just so many directions that they could go, and even things that the movie tried to do comedically, I felt like were so mild, and they were like amusing, but there were and I wanted to laugh because I wanted this to really be the comedy that I expected, but I didn't laugh out loud, once. And I think that's kind of like one of the tests of watching a comedy movie for a first time by yourself, because when you're watching it in the theater, sometimes you're going to laugh just because other people are laughing, or um, so there'll be at least some of that. But when you're watching it by yourself, like it really has to be funny to make you kind of like laugh out loud. And this movie didn't even do that once. There were certainly things that I found amusing, but there were, no audible uh, chuckles or laughter or anything like that. So um, I think that um, and I also think that what's Teyonah Parris, she did a fine job. I think she was actually the one that, yeah, I mean, her and Jamie Foxx were trying as much as they could, to make it funny and to add those comedic elements. Because I really didn't, I felt like John Boyega didn't give you anything, and I'm not saying that's his fault. It could have just been the writing and what was required of the character, but I felt like that was a big
Uh,
miss not to go all out and have a big comedic actor that could do drama, really be in that main role.
Because I think what it came across was they were trying to have John be the straight man
Hmm.
and be more serious, and he's all of this. Where I think if like again, I don't know if it was his choice or the director's choice. Like, hey, we don't want you to be comedic. We want you to be the straight guy, and you can
Hmm.
let Slick Charles and Yo Yo do all the jokes around you. As opposed to he could have been even more over since like it's supposed to be homage to black exploitation movies. He could have
Yeah.
been more over the top, more pushing it, more bombastic.
Hmm.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And have him just be more over the top. I think he did a good job in what he was doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it didn't seem like this was Finn from Star Wars or anything. I really believed his different characters he was playing. He was doing a decent job. It's just again maybe I don't know if it's the material, the directing. It's just okay. He was there. You know what I mean? And he was the guy we were following. And even if it pushed more into dark, dark comedy, it would have been great. Like I thought it was like the stuff where he gets shot in the car, he dies, and you see him pop up. All these things could have started, opening avenues and him freaking out, like what's going on.
Yeah.
But again, he was just more serious. Even when he saw his clone, he was shooting his clone. That was more
Hmm.
serious. There was no like. I guess, and again, I want to believe it's the director's choice that he wanted him to be more serious because oh, you gotta take this guy seriously. This is the serious lead,
Hmm.
and Jamie Foxx and Yo Yo and even the other like prostitutes, all the other people could be funny, but we want to keep him like serious and dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. So and it just set a weird, it set the wrong tone,
Yeah,
throughout
definitely.
throughout the movie, because it wasn't light or silly. You just had kind of like this serious line cutting through the whole thing. And these other characters, like the pimp played by Jamie Foxx, Slick Charles, and the hoe,
Yo Yo.
prostitute, yeah, played by Teyonah Parris, Yo Yo, who were kind of a little bit more outlandish, right, and characters with big personalities, but um, yeah, there was no back and forth, with John Boyega. Like there was no silliness whatsoever. So everything I think that they attempted, it just kept falling flat. You know, and but perhaps, I mean, those are big problems. I think because I didn't rewatch the trailer, but I felt like it was, kind of, maybe I jumped to conclusions just based off of Jamie Foxx being there, but and I think maybe also that angle that you mentioned of it being, whether it's a throwback or a tribute, to like black exploitation films, but I just assumed, that it was going to be a lot funnier. So that
Well,
that those are
oh,
definitely major problems, or a major problem. But
Like,
the other one is
oh,
that, yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say real quick one scene because you just mentioned like we thought it was gonna be funnier. Like one scene that I thought could have, I wished had been the tone for the whole movie was when Slick Charles was coming with the cavalry, and you just see a whole bunch of like low riders, and he's just sitting there,
Hmm.
and they even go up, and that part's in the trailer when they go up to the, that cashier. They're like, "Hey, we want," and they have the guns. I'm like, "Hey, this seems a little outlandish and crazy."
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think the only part that made me actually do a chuckle out loud was when they actually go under base, and you see the
Hmm.
guy in the little razor scooter, and he just gets chucked. He gets like
Hmm.
tossed across, and that gave me a
Hmm.
little chuckle.
Yeah.
And God damn, chicken is a great name for a restaurant.
Yeah. Well, I think the problem was that, and again, I think this could indicate, again, that they were just more concerned with a particular message coming
Oh,
across. I felt like the movie wasn't willing to laugh at itself,
oh,
like to be silly in that point.
oh,
It was like we want to be funny, but also taken very seriously,
oh.
like as a dramatic movie, maybe making some um,
Social commentary.
sobering social commentary
Oh,
or something like that, instead of, you can still do that and not take yourself so seriously, and have fun and be silly with it and whatnot. And I think the movie, it felt like it was, unwilling to do that, and because of that, it it just didn't,
and
the
and,
jokes and the comedy just didn't land.
and again, I may not be the right audience for the social commentary, but I also don't. I feel like the social commentary. I don't get if it's intended towards, let's say, like white America, taking advantage of blacks, or is it about a commentary towards Black Americans that you let yourself get involved in these indulgences and
Yeah.
distracted. So I
Yeah.
don't like even that. I don't get who they were like actually pointing the commentary to,
Yeah.
because it sort of felt like they were blaming, white America for like this urban culture that they're in. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not their fault, but it's white America's fault. But I don't get who they were targeting with
Right.
their social commentary either.
Yeah, because while I think the movie, uh, I again, yeah, I think I also, I think there's too much ambiguity there. I think you can take a lot of things that are done in the movie and just kind of run with them, but ultimately I don't think it does a good job of presenting whatever argument it wants to make. I did think there were some interesting ideas there about, sort of maybe like stereotypes, or even, sort of cultural, identifiers or markers, and how, we can, ethnic groups or minorities or subcultures or whatever, um, continue to perpetuate those, and they become ingrained, and then they're, exploitable, but then it's hard to break that cycle. And I thought that was a really interesting idea to explore, um, uh, whether, through the lens of race or not. But the movie, I think, has so many issues that even that gets kind of, lost, in the noise. And again, so therefore, I think that the even bigger problem is that ultimately, um, the motivation for the antagonists, and just their whole agenda and their whole role was pretty convoluted and unclear. I thought Kiefer Sutherland's character was very like over the top, and just, was just, meant to be the bad guy, and so that's just what he was. You didn't really have any understanding of, what his motivation was, or what drove him. So
Yeah,
anyway, let
he
me
was
try
a
to.
real
Yeah.
fast. Yeah, he literally, now that you said it, literally just was a body who could have been anybody,
Yeah.
and it was just for hey, this guy's being a-hole. He's white. He's being a-hole. He's controlling us, and we have to kill him. And that's
Mhm.
literally all. There was nothing. Like, we don't know who he worked for. We don't. We got more about the original Fontaine than we did about him, and he was in the
Mhm.
movie more. But we got nothing except that for some reason he thought it was cool to use this super secret code word in front of everybody that controls the clones,
Yeah.
and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was strange. So yeah, the movie is basically about it starts off following this drug dealer. You're kind of going through a day in the life. He's hanging out with this little kid. Someone comes to someone steps on his territory. He's going to handle that later. Then, one of his associates comes in, gives him the money that he's collected. It's short, so he goes back to claim it. And in that around that moment, he gets shot and wakes up the next day thinking that that was just a dream. But he had had another encounter with Jamie Foxx, his pimp, or a pimp, and he had kind of witnessed what happened. And so when he goes to see him the next day, in a kind of Groundhog's Day moment, right, where I think he's going back to do the same things that he did the day before, Jamie Foxx is like, "Yo, hold up, I saw you get killed," and so then they go um, to explore that and see if Jamie Foxx is telling the truth, and so that leads them to they join up with Yo-Yo, played by Teyonah Parris, and then the three of them, um, again inspired by Yo-Yo's Nancy Drew collection, go off to try to unravel this mystery of what's going on, which leads them to discover that there's this underground um, base where there are these experiments taking place and where they seem to be producing clones of particular individuals. You eventually come to find out that what they're doing is trying to work on a mission to improve society and try to create peace. But in order to do that, they still need certain people so they select, right, certain regions or areas or neighborhoods where they can run their experiments, and so they kind of induce hypnotic and sort of drug effects on people to keep them in the dark, while they conduct these experiments trying to genetically modify and improve behavior in individuals to try to create a more peaceful society. Does that sound about right, Kevin?
Yeah, it's close enough.
Um, but but yeah, I mean that's as simple as I can make it. Then of course, Fontaine, who's John Boyega's character, who we've been following from the beginning, finds out that he's a clone of a clone of a clone. Um, so I don't think we've ever met the real one. Was what his counterpart, was it Charmaine, or do you remember what the guy's name was?
Chester?
Chester. Was he the original clone? Is that
Well, no. Chester was the bodyguard for Keith Sutherland.
yeah?
The old guy was supposed to be the original one.
Oh, really?
But yeah, the old one where he's like, I gave y'all all some memories like about his brother dying, but that's
Hmm.
why he goes, don't think you knew him because you didn't hold his. I only gave you some memories of him. So that's why he was the original one. And he says that he did it because his brother died and he wanted
Oh,
to stop this.
that old one. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, yes,
That
now
old
it's
guy.
coming back to me. Yes, the old one at the end, which I thought was originally when he before he turned around to do the reveal, I could have sworn it was going to be Samuel L. Jackson, which would have been awesome.
Would have been great.
But no, just when you were talking and you were saying the old guy, I thought you meant the guy that he kept pouring liquor into his cup
Oh,
outside of the mini store.
you ain't win
Mini,
again? That guy? That's great.
yeah, yeah. But again, Kiefer Sutherland's character, who was just the face of the um, evil corporation and the antagonist. Um, he was just a heavy. He was just there to, yeah, just to be the face of opposition, and just to be bad and evil, because that's just what he is just bad and evil. Um, and then,
And, and even if we got to it, like since we're getting into this part, like I don't even get what the message was because the OG Fontaine, he's like, "Hey, my brother died, and we've kind of been, because of the society
yeah,
we live in, we need to get better. So I'm trying to make society better." And they're like, "No, we want to keep our society, of hookers and drug dealing and all this stuff. We don't think that." So the chain, and again, forced assimilation is not the best idea, but I don't get what the message was that like, hey, we're trying to make society better, but no, we rather have our pimps and whores and drugs and little kids getting shot because that's what they
yeah,
felt like they were arguing against them, as opposed to arguing like, well, no, that's not right. You have to give us the opportunity to change.
yeah. And I think John Boyega's character at one point even says something where he says like, it's our fault that our society or our culture is this way, but it's ours, or something.
Yeah,
He said something like that, along those lines. Which, yeah, I agree with that point. And I think maybe through the character of Yo-Yo, I think maybe was the way that they tried to maybe show progress, because I think at the end she stops being a prostitute, and decides to go back to school, I
yeah,
think.
and there was no explanation why she was the only non-clone in the whole city.
Yeah, she was the only one.
Yeah, because remember, like it wouldn't work on her, so she wasn't a clone.
Hmm.
And I would have explained if she had just come into town, but she's been there a while. Like, you think they would have just killed her and cloned her?
Yeah,
But yeah, but she does step out of it. They want to go break up this other stuff, go to Memphis. So I think that's shown. But they also made a point to like, especially differentiate this black urban culture from not just whites, but like Asians and Hispanics, because the old Fontaine was saying, he goes, "Oh, we wanted to see what made you not act like the whites or the people in the barrios or in Chinatown."
hmm,
So it definitely was a point to mention to, hey, yeah, everyone else is a minority, but we're like, this is the people who are getting experimented on or something.
yeah, yeah. It was strange, and it was the other. I guess the other examples that I had, I mentioned Edgar Wright already. The other movie that came to mind for me as a comparison was The Cabin in the Woods, um, which, again, very different, but was, again, a movie that I think uh, leaned into not taking itself very seriously. I didn't get it the first time I watched it, um, and but have come to appreciate it, since then. Um, but yeah, I kind of had similar elements, obviously, of something nefarious going on, some through some major corporation or whatever, kind of using human beings as a testing grounds. So I thought that was just a movie that I thought of in comparison, as I thought of just elements that this movie tried to execute but failed, to other movies that have been able to do that successfully. I The one scene that I did think was kind of funny, was on the right track, was the scene where they were going, or they were sh- uh, passing secrets, to
Oh
each
yeah,
other by like simulating sex.
yeah.
I thought that was funny, and at first, I think the first shot of it, I thought it was really happening. So it was kind of tickled, when I saw that they were just simulating
Yeah.
it. And then the other times I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, that's pretty funny.
They
So
tickled your fancy.
yeah. But I think in your introduction, you said that there were some things that you really could have done without.
Well, yeah, I just felt it was parts that just dragged. I think
Yeah.
you said it, your introduction. I'm like, it was just scenes that like, okay, we kept repeating scenes of them just like, I don't know. I'm trying to remember it now. It was just like long setup scenes where nothing's happening, and I'm like, okay, like I just could have done without it because that's when it really started losing me.
Hmm.
And but again, there was some good stuff. Oh, there's one other one I have to mention, but it was just, I think you said where they could have knocked off like half an hour easily of this movie
Yeah.
because I could have just, and again, there was nothing egregious. It wasn't like, oh, I don't like that, like, you know what I mean, any of that stuff. It was just I could have done without some of these scenes because I was just, especially I think I stopped at like around 57, 59 minutes the first time I watched it because
Hmm.
I was falling asleep and I wasn't tired, but I was just watching. I was like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? I was like, oh, you know what I mean? I was catching myself falling asleep and I didn't want to do it a disservice, so I stopped it. I said, oh, I'll
Hmm.
finish this later because I didn't know how long it was going to keep doing that. So
Hmm.
just stuff like that, and even like towards the end where they just kept showing different people, like, oh, look at the chaos, and then you have that scene with Tyrone flipping through the stations, and they just keep showing, again going from different people to different people.
Hmm.
It just seemed very repetitive that they were just showing some repetitive shots that could have been trimmed down.
Yeah. So you also took issue with the lighting in some set pieces.
Yeah, like, and I think I saw a picture because I was trying to look for the movie poster, see if I could post it up here. But like, it was dark. And I guess they were trying to create like, and to me, it came off more not campy in a good way, but it was just like, oh look, this for some reason there's this like laboratory that's all dark with just purple lighting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't know why any scientist would work at this. I think the humor and even the action shots and stuff would have came off better if it was just a decently lit lab. You know what I mean? And we
Hmm.
could see what was going on. And now you have like this drug dealer, this pimp, and this prostitute going through like a regularly lit stuff with like these crazy clothes on.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? That would have created maybe more an image that would have stuck with me. Like I know I used the word iconography before, but
Hmm.
there's only maybe one or two things that I remember the purple lighting. I'm like, oh, that stuck out, but I don't remember anything else. Like I think these characters would have stuck out even a little bit more if you would have just put them in a whole different environment, like a bright lit environment, and that's what you're going around catching scientists.
Yeah.
So I think that's what. And again, I do understand sometimes it's my TV, but I watched the first part in the middle of the day. I watched the second part in the evening,
Yeah.
and it just was still dark both times.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so like I was looking at some facts, and I don't think there's any fun facts for this movie because I'm just going to say this now to give you an example, right? Because one of the things that one of the more overt kind of confusing identity crisis things is that you're never really told when this movie's taking place, right? Because it seems like it could be taking place. I mean, there's cars from different eras, but then there's hairstyles, there's clothing from different eras. So even that was like kind of confusing. Like, are these characters, because there's definitely been elements like that in other movies, right? Where it's set in modern times, but there's this old timer, this character that's just stuck in the 70s or in the 80s or whatever the case. So you didn't know if it was something like that or what exactly was going on. So there's an explanation here which I think actually, for me, does again kind of confirms my theory about what other angles and things they were trying to highlight here, but also how they missed. the mark in trying to do so successfully and effectively. So it says, though the movie is set in modern times and references a lot of events that took place in the 90s and 2000s, and even uses trap in musical scenes, main characters are stylized in 70s and 80s clothes, furniture, and hair, nodding to stereotypical views of black people deliberately engineered by white people, which is key to the main plot of the movie. So I guess in that explanation, it's the again that underground organization that's that's adorning them in that way. Is that what it's trying to
I think that's what I got from what
communicate?
you said.
Yeah,
It doesn't explain when I drive down my city why I see people dressing like that, though. But
but I mean, either way, that's not that's not something that is I think expressed effectively in
yeah,
the movie, right? And the so I think the movie again wants to almost take itself as this sort of high art, with this really meaningful social criticism, but it's not. Like, I did not think of it at all as anything worthwhile. Me sitting there after the movie, continuing to like think about it, or explore it, or excavate, for meaning or whatever. And not because, again, I think some of those things that were presented were interesting, but ultimately it just wasn't executed very effectively to me. Even to the point where it really lends itself, or really deserves to be taken more seriously as social commentary. My stance with any piece of art or film or music that wants to be effective social commentary. For me, it first has to be done really well, executed really well in that medium. Like, for example, Childish Gambino's song, like "This Is America," which had such a powerful message, but was a really, really good song too, which made it that much more effective, and even broadens, its audience to then communicate its message in a bigger way. So, I mean, that's an interesting point that this is highlighting, but again, I didn't feel that was um, portrayed,
well,
effectively in the movie,
uh,
unfortunately.
not to get off topic, but real quick. Since we mentioned like well done social commentary movies, is there a social commentary movie that you think like, hey, this is well because you mentioned a song, but is
Yeah.
there a movie that springs to mind and say, you know what, I watched this movie and it has some social commentary. I think it was really well done.
Mm,
Because I have one that
well,
popped in
like we,
mind when you
we
were
we
talking.
just watched Dragged Across Concrete,
Okay.
and I feel like there was a lot of different angles of social commentary there that was pretty good. I mean, just off the top of my head, because that one was so recent. Um, but yeah, I'm curious what you have.
Well, mine's from 1995.
Do the
It's a
right
movie.
thing.
No, oh, that's a good one too.
That's older
Written
than
by
that.
written by Harmony Korine.
Hmm.
It's a movie called Kids.
Oh, okay.
And like just when you were talking about social commentary, I remember watching that movie and when it was done, because they had that rape scene, the drug induced rape scene at the end. And I just remember thinking, whoa, that's I mean, that really did hit me. I'm like, man, that's how society is. There's society like that, and
Yeah.
this is the dangers of what you think. You don't even realize what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I never seen Kids. I heard a lot about it. But yeah, it was just
Oh, you're a
before
kid.
my time. But for example, American History X comes
Oh,
to mind. Really excellent movie. Even Fight Club, I think,
okay.
has really interesting social commentary. And again, both of those are just excellent movies, right? And because they're excellent movies, I think that that message and those ideas stick with you even more,
Hmm.
because they're communicated so effectively. Um, so,
And I think something that suffered from this, for some reason, I don't know why I equated to it, even though it's not a comedy, but it has some funny moments in it. Like Hustle and Flow, like had a very like it was modern, but had a very like 70s type vibe to it in some parts.
hmm
And for some
hmm
reason, like that was just done well. Like they had comedy, they had a little bit of comedy, they had more seriousness. They had like this, the white DJ and all this stuff happening.
hmm
And for some reason, like that's what popped into my head just now when you were talking. I was like, oh
yeah,
man, I want to go watch Hustle and Flow now.
yeah. Um, are you a mm, are you a John Boyega fan? Or fan might even be too strong of a word, just because he's not that seasoned of an actor. But yeah, what's your
I
take
I
on
would say
him
I would say I
generally?
am. Like I don't think I've ever seen anything, that he's been in
Yeah,
that I haven't liked his performances in.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Did you watch that his breakout role in that
Attack the Block.
Attack the Block? Yeah.
Yes, I did.
Was it? Is that
I,
I never
I,
saw that. Is that a good movie?
yeah, I thought it was really good. It was an original idea. It was fun. It wasn't exactly how I thought it was going to be,
Uh-huh.
but I can see why he got a lot of hype. It was really well done,
Uh-huh.
and that's why I'm like. And then the Star Wars stuff. And I know I've seen a couple other stuff here and there, and like I said, everything he's been in, like that's why I think he did a really good job. I liked his performances in here. I just didn't think it serviced the story well, and I think that's more with. I saw that. I think it was his first time directing a movie, the director,
Uh-huh.
or a
Yeah.
feature, and I think that's where it suffered from was the direction,
Uh-huh.
because the
Yeah.
director, and I don't know why I went down this rabbit hole. I was reading about the movie Evolution today,
Uh-huh.
and it was supposed to be a serious movie. It was supposed to be a dark horror, like
Really.
sci-fi, and then Ivan Reitman came on, and he's like, well, he hired a rewrite, and he wanted to add more comedic elements because he said he saw this as a spiritual successor to like Ghostbusters
Uh-huh.
that he's always wanted to make. And the original author didn't want it. He's like, no, I don't want that. But he worked with the writers, and they turned in what they turned in. But and again, it's not saying that Evolution was a great movie. It's just saying that that's where a director could see something and say, hey, I'm going to change this. I'm going to change this a little bit, and let's make something different.
Yeah.
So I think what we get is what the director's vision is. So I think a lot of the fault, again, I don't think it's with the actors.
Right.
I don't know if it's necessarily with the writing, because I think a more seasoned director said, "Hey, would have been like, hey, let's clean up this writing a little bit."
Yeah.
And I just think, like I said, hopefully he makes another movie and it's tighter, it's better.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, I did like I thought that the cinematography was good. I mean, it wasn't anything out of this world or anything new, but I thought it was executed well. It wasn't anything that was bad and created a distraction. Instead, there were times where I was like, oh, I really like that shot, or I really like that camera movement. So I felt like that was actually a positive. I didn't mind the colors. The movie was a little bit dark, but um, while it was more style over substance, I thought it was cool, and I did like the movie. I mean, excuse me, the music that
Oh
was
yeah.
utilized in the movie. I thought was good too. Um, so yeah, for me, it's more of a disappointment in the sense that it had some good things going for it. It had good actors. It had a good premise, and uh, and even if they, yeah, just would have maintained the cloning aspect of it, but really just tried to make it more funny, or just leaned into exaggerating maybe some of those black exploitation elements, like Michael J. White did with what's the name of that movie now? Uh,
The Dynamite one, Black
yeah,
Dynamite.
Black Dynamite, which is such a good movie and so funny. Um, it could have been, outside of the it would have even justified the runtime,
Hmm.
a lot more by making it more entertaining and enjoyable. I did like that cameo from David Allen Greer. Um, that scene was a little bit cringy, but he did a good job as that
Yeah.
wacky pastor in that church.
And even about what you said about the cloning aspect, if they would have even gone with, hey, there's a young, real version of him and a real
Yeah,
and the clone version, like, the argument becomes, well, who's the clone or who's real?
yeah,
I mean, because I remember, and they could have been, hey, you realize you're a clone, like almost like you're waking up in the Matrix type thing. And like, well, what's fake, what's not? Like, well, if I
yeah,
experience it, is it real? Stuff like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Agreed.
And then, real quick, I looked up the director, Taylor. 'Cause apparently, I didn't do that before now. But apparently, he helped write the sequels to Creed 2, or the sequel Creed 2,
uh,
and Space Jam: A New Legacy,
oh,
both which I was not a fan of the writing on. So there's that. But good for him, and I hope he does good.
lost you.
Because
Both what?
oh no, Did you hear both movies or no?
You said you were about to say something about both of the movies.
Oh yeah, both of the movies, which I was not a fan of the writing of.
You were gonna make a point about both of the movies.
Did you hear me? Can you hear me now?
No.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't a fan of either the writing of
Mm.
the movies.
Oh,
Like, I
really?
loved Creed 1. I maybe have seen Creed 2 one time in my life. I've seen Creed 1
Mm.
like 1,000 times.
What about Creed
And
3?
uh, I keep wanting to watch it, but because I didn't like Creed 2, I keep putting it off. I'm like, oh, I just got to watch this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Not the same without Sly.
yeah, and or what was the director on that one? The first Creed? Ryan
Ryan Cougar?
Yeah,
Cougar? Yeah.
yeah, like he's a tighter director. And Space Jam and New Legacy, there's nothing I need to say about that movie. Not a dang thing.
Yeah.
My kids watched it one time, and we have watched they went back to watching the original.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and again, it's not. Again, I'm not putting this all off on Mr. Taylor here. I again, there were some things I really did like. I did like some of the twists and everything. So I'm hoping that he's able to put together a tighter movie, something that I would want to run out of
Connectivity
saying.
issues.
So,
Maybe it's just over our transmission. Gotcha.
I'm back. Are you
Okay.
there?
Yeah.
All right. So yeah. So hopefully he puts a tighter movie together that I would recommend to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right. I do have one fun fact for you.
You told me you had no fun
I was
facts.
able to dig one up, man.
Oh, live and on air. So you were real time fun facting, is what you're saying.
Something like that, a little bit.
Okay. Well, you know what? Kudos to you. Because had to turn on the old harpsichord here. Fun facts with Juan.
Before that, I did want to
Oh.
mention I did like Teyonah Parris. Felt like she did a good job in her role,
Hmm.
um, both as just an acting and also as a convincing hoe. Um, and her and Jamie Foxx did have some entertaining exchanges and some good one-liners. But I was wondering where I've seen her, and um, she's in the upcoming Marvels movie. But
Oh.
before that, she was in WandaVision, which is the
Okay.
only one of the Marvel shows that I've seen, and I did like it, and she was good in it.
Oh, that's her. Okay.
hmm Yeah. So the one and only fun fact that I have for you on the Cloned Tyrone is that in the final scene, when Tyrone wakes up, gets dressed, and goes outside, I think you'll appreciate this, Kevin, because it is also a throwback to a 1995 film. It's an homage to Friday, co
Uh,
written and starring Ice Cube. His clothes even resemble the character Craig. But ultimately, even that whole
Yeah.
last part was just not necessary. You know,
Yeah.
it was
It was
pointless.
it was added to justify the title.
Yeah,
And for the whole movie, I'm not gonna I kid you not, I thought Fontaine was his last name. I thought
uh
his first name was Tyrone.
yeah. I thought that was gonna be a reveal or something at some point. That last part just felt like overindulgent. It was like, dude, just because it wasn't like an end credit scene where it's like a minute. It was a bit longer than that,
Yeah.
too long. So
And then I don't get the title, like, because obviously Tyrone was a clone,
yeah,
or maybe it's just because his people would have thought, "Hey, Tyrone, they cloned you, even though you were a clone." And that's where I got
yeah,
like, maybe it would have they could have gone deeper with like, well, who's a clone or who's not, especially if you feel that you're real.
yeah. No, I think you're right in what you said earlier. It was more like a cheeky,
Uh,
little title as opposed to something that had a direct correlation
uh,
to the
uh.
plot,
And
which you would think it
uh,
would be just on the nature of the title.
and I did think I kept thinking at the very end they were going to say the line, "Hey, they cloned Tyrone."
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be that type of thing.
No, took
But
themselves too seriously, even for that.
I did think of one part that I really liked,
Okay.
like when they were doing like the Tarantino flashback to Slick Charles's his plan. You know what I mean? Because after Boyega got shot again, and then it was like boom,
Oh
it jumps
yeah.
back to the plan.
Hmm.
When they go to see when they show Isaac in the car rehearsing his line,
Hmm.
he's like, "Oh, you think they got?" He
Oh
goes,
yeah.
"Was that good?" He goes, "Yeah, you're like regular Denzel." He goes, "Denzel in Training Day, Denzel in Book of Eli." Book of Eli. He goes, "Damn, let's do it again."
Yeah. That was funny.
Which
Yeah.
I think.
Uh
Oh,
huh.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, which I think was also a commentary on like, oh, they rather be like Denzel in Training Day than Denzel in Book of Eli.
That's an interesting
I
point.
mean, like that renegade as opposed to that good guy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was merely gonna say I thought that actor did a good job. Because again, that one kind of threw me off even at the beginning of not even knowing where where the movie was going, even right at the beginning. Because the
Mm.
first time you meet that character, he's like shaving,
Yeah.
and and then he turns out to be like this rival of Fontaine. Um, and I did like that scene when Fontaine goes and asks him for help, and he's like, you shouldn't have come here, and
Yeah.
it doesn't go well. So I like that character remained consistently like who he was, until right up in the end, and even was pretty serious until, and then that kind of moment where they gave him a comedic moment. I just really liked what they did with that character. It felt very different from kind of what happened with the rest of the movie, where he actually
Yeah.
had like a more enjoyable sort of arc,
Yeah.
and
And
remained consistent to who he was.
and I thought that comedic part was so natural and so well done,
Yeah.
and it gave so much more. Even though he didn't get a lot of time, it gave him so much more depth and humanity. Because
Hmm.
who wouldn't joke around? Hey, how did I sound? Now let's do it
Yeah.
again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just added so much.
Yeah.
And then, oh, another thing before we get into things, um, there was that white dude that was cloned, who had the
Hmm.
afro, who had like
Yeah.
the locks, and they even admitted he was the first one cloned, but then they just dismissed that, like, oh, you meant my first clone. It goes, oh, the white
Yeah.
guy, and then they just keep going.
Yeah.
So, like I said,
Yeah.
just missed opportunities. But
Hmm. Yeah.
is it about that time?
Yeah. Don't delay the inevitable.
Here comes the music. It's ratings time. It's ratings time.
Okay, I just changed my rating after our discussion from what I
Ooh.
had originally,
Up or down?
and it's mainly because of this. I just can't recommend it. So for me, I have to knock it down a little bit because I just wouldn't recommend it. Even though again, for me, it wasn't the worst movie in the world. It, that mystery really gripped me for the first half of the movie. So I was really into it. I was disappointed that it lacked the comedy, and but I was still following along. It wasn't probably until like 3/4 of the way that I kind of started to get bored. Um, so it had that going for it. I was disappointed by the comedy and by the sci-fi and just the whole explanation of why the events were happening. Again, the movie I really felt like had an identity crisis. I think it really wasted the talents of someone like Jamie Foxx. Um, but still good cinematography, good music throughout, good acting performances. So I don't necessarily hate it, but I can't see myself recommending it to anyone. Um, because it just wasn't. It was long, and it ultimately just wasn't very good, unfortunately. So because of that, I knocked it half a point. So for me, it's a 2 out of 5.
Okay, seems fair. Um, it's a movie that I wanted to like. It's a movie that I went in wanting to like. Like you said, Juan, I can't, and I said earlier, I can't picture myself recommending this to anyone, not even to myself to watch again. You know what I mean? So, like, there's no reason for me to watch. Maybe one day I'll be like, you know what? Maybe I was too hard on it. Let me rewatch. Maybe I missed something, but I doubt that's going to happen. Um, I think there were again, I can't fault any performances, but if it's possible to make a bad meal out of good ingredients, that's what this was. The recipe wasn't there. I came in wanting to change my rating, but it's going to stay as the same as yours, a 2 out of 5.
Uh,
You know what I mean? Because it wasn't horrible. And again, like I said, there was nothing egregious. There was nothing terrible. It's just there were some parts that just plodded along, and they were just trudging here and there. And there was every once in a while there was things I did like, but ultimately I'm a huge payoff guy, and the payoff for me wasn't worth sitting through this again. And so yeah, so it's ultimately a 2 out of 5. No need to watch it, people, unless you
yeah,
just really like John Boyega, or if Jamie Foxx passes away and you want to see one of his last performances.
dear God, no.
I know, but
Actually, I have high hopes, and perhaps I shouldn't even have high hopes
it looks good. It looks
for
good.
Strays.
I know you were going to
Yeah,
say that. Yeah, it looks
I
good.
mean, for starters, it's Will Ferrell and Jamie Foxx.
Hmm.
It also looks, you know, it's R-rated, so that has potential to be really funny because the comedy is not watered down. It might be a bit raunchy, but I
Oh,
don't
it
know.
looks like it's going to be raunchy.
Well, the main reason I just say I shouldn't have high hopes is just because comedy's just not what it used to be.
Hmm.
The world has changed, times have changed, and nobody wants to offend. So are Will Ferrell and Jamie Foxx in a position to try to salvage comedy by being willing and taking the risk to offend? Perhaps. I hope so. you usually are going to offend someone when you try to genuinely be funny and make people laugh. So hopefully they'll achieve it, but we'll see.
That movie also has Randall Park in it and Will Forte. It's gonna be gold.
Okay. Yeah, it's got a lot going for it. But they also could have given you all the funny bits in the trailer. So there's always that as well.
But I feel there's gonna be raunchy bits that are not in that trailer that are gonna kill.
Yeah, probably.
So,
Gonna watch that one with the girls?
no.
Okay,
They,
good man.
they saw the part of the trailer. I was like, girls, get out. They're like, ooh, we want to see that movie. I'm like, ain't happening. Get out.
Yeah. You can show them Milo and Otis.
They have seen it and they love it.
Okay.
Because I am a
Do
good
they
father.
know how many puppies were killed during the making of that film?
That's right. That's what I'm going to tell my daughters. The ones who cried endlessly during 101 Dalmatians, the live action one, when they were kidnapped. That's what I'm going to tell them.
Leave it to Uncle Juan. I'll tell them.
Hey, let me tell you.
Girls, you want a fun fact about Milo and Otis? Like 17 dogs were killed throwing them off of that waterfall.
They're like, what? But yeah. But as long as you don't ruin Homeward Bound, they'll be fine.
Oh, that's a great movie. Tearjerker. All right. Well, that is the episode. Thank you.
And that is the season.
That is a wrap. That is a wrap on the season. I was really hoping to kind of at least cinematically end on a higher note. But hey, that's the way it goes, when we're watching movies that we don't know much about, and hopefully we'll save you the time, and so you don't have to watch it. But yeah, as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Please stick with us as we, take a hiatus. We are going to do some brainstorming and, try to come up with ideas, fresh ideas, new things, new challenges, more fun and entertainment. But we'll also come back to our tried and true recipe of just, dishing out our amateurish thoughts about the world that we love of cinema. Right, Kevin?
That's right. And during this break, we're going to bring some life into Juan's going to bring some life into this world with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
So congratulations to you on that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, congratulations to Mark, who will be bringing in life.
Yeah.
I will not. I'll just be raising life. That's about it.
Yeah. So prayers appreciated.
So yeah, can't wait to get back to watching. And honestly, even though the movies aren't always the greatest, sometimes they're just fun to watch and talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to what season 3 might have in store for us.
And then, other than that, not left to say, but catch you on the flip side.
Yeah. Later, haters.
Later.